So that was surprising how, like, literally a week after getting back from our honeymoon, or even on our honeymoon.
Yeah, we argued on our honeymoon.
We argued.
Not a lot, but we definitely did.
A few times.
Yeah, we had a few times.
Over, the dumbest one was over gelato.
Who argues over gelato? Like,
we do. We argue over gelato, so.
If we had to redo our honeymoon, I don't think that would happen.
Yeah.
This way.
Yeah.
We've come a long way, but yeah. Hey guys and girls, welcome to Marriage Takes 3. I'm Richard.
And I'm Gabrielle.
I just want to say thank you guys for the encouragement and support and outreach, and for watching our first episode we put out there. We know we don't have a plethora of experience in years of marriage, but I think in our experience and, understanding what God speaks about marriage, it's, again, we talked about, I think the last time, that length doesn't equal strength.
Yeah.
We've seen, and I think most people have seen, probably long-standing marriages that really struggle. And so we take that and know that we don't have that. We're so thankful for the encouragement that we have in this, and because it is something we've talked about for a while and kind of went back and forth on. And so we're just thankful in that. And I just really think God has spoken into our marriage, just the way everything's kind of happened into our relationship. And the more that we, really seek and try to understand more of the creation of marriage from the creator of it, right? We talk about, I think we've talked about that before, or, we talk about it a lot, is like going to whoever created something to understand how it really works. Like, if I really want to know how something worked well, how it was built and what it was meant for and all the things it was supposed to do, I'm going to go to who created it. They know it more than anyone. They know the intent behind it. And they had the passion and the love and everything behind it. So, God created marriage, so why not consistently and continuously go to Him for that?
True.
How you feeling today?
I'm feeling so much better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Little do they know, this is the third attempt at filming this, and it's technical errors that we're doing this a third time.
Yeah.
But this is the best I've felt filming this, so maybe it's meant to be. I haven't felt well up until today.
No, It's been a rough few days, huh?
Yeah. It's okay.
I'm so glad that you said you had minimal pain.
I have minimal pain right now.
You've been in good spirits all day, so I'm really happy for that. I'm really proud of you for powering through that.
Thanks.
So today, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about expectations.
Expectations. Man, that's a big one. I think we've all placed expectations on relationships, or what we thought marriage should look like or would look like, or our version of it. So I think that's a huge one, and we've definitely had them, right? And also expectations versus reality. What's the real world look like versus what we really thought it would look like, or we thought it should look like. So let's start at the beginning. What were some expectations you had before we met, growing up in relationships, maybe in high school or in early adult years? Like what were some of those expectations? One, you had just in relationships, or what did you expect marriage to look like, be like?
Well, I think before surrendering fully to God, which I definitely think is a process, because I can't say even when I met you that I was 100% there. But mostly growing up and in my early 20s, I definitely felt like my expectations of marriage were highly influenced by media, social media, movies, stuff like that. That's, the rom-coms and the fairy tale type stuff is definitely... I knew marriage wasn't perfect. That's not reality, but I think I definitely did have this idea of like meeting this perfect person, and then that's when life would really begin, and that's when life would be great, and I wouldn't feel lonely anymore, and I wouldn't feel rejected anymore. And what I came to realize, thankfully, even before I met you, is that marriage isn't something that's going to fix what's wrong with me, because I think that that's kind of what a lot of people think it will do. Through my own experiences and my own thought patterns that I had before, And then through talking with other people, that they, they're so desperate for that marriage because I think they truly believe that, if they're lonely, that they'll never be lonely again. Or if they're, insecure, they'll never feel insecurity again. Or if they've been through a rejection, they'll never be rejected again. And the thing is, marriage can't supply those things. I think she'll be okay with this, but I think, my best friend's been through a divorce, and we were talking about this topic about how marriage does not fix you. And thankfully we had both come to that revelation that marriage cannot fix what's wrong with me. And she said, the loneliest I ever was inside my marriage.
Wow.
And that just goes to show you that it is not the end all be all. It is not the fix all. It's not the solution. We played around with potentially calling this podcast "Marriage Isn't the Answer." That was our number 2 choice.
Close number 2.
Yeah, because it's not the answer. Jesus is the answer all the time. And regardless of if I ever got married or didn't, I knew I needed to come to that full understanding that you can't, 1, fix me, and 2, I should never put that responsibility on you to supply these things that only God can supply. Because healing and wholeness comes from God alone. Like, I know we both agree that we really can't stand that line, "You complete me," because you don't complete me, and I don't complete you.
Yeah.
So that was my expectations growing up. It was definitely more this ideal, perfect situation that would all make life make sense and make it really beautiful, and just growing and realizing that that's not necessarily true, that some of the most devastating moments in people's lives is caused because of not great marriages. So, which I think it gets really disappointing because and maybe contributes to the divorce rate when you have this expectation that this person's going to fix you, and you go into that marriage and realize not only will they not fix you, but it's going to highlight and elevate the issues that you have. And you go, well, okay, so this wasn't it. Maybe I married the wrong person. So instead of reflecting and going, oh, another person can't fix these things, it's this person can't fix these things. And so then they leave and they go in again in another marriage, and guess what? That person can't fix those things either. So
yeah, it's really good. I think we're living through right now through COVID-19, and we hear it all the time, right? People talk about it with money, right? Like, having more money doesn't make you anything. It just it highlights who you already were, right? And now you just have a platform and a resource to be more of that, or to be exposed more. I think marriage is the same. It just exposes or highlights who you are, in a sense, right? Like, in that moment, now, can you grow and can you change? Obviously, of course, right? But yeah, I think you're right that you can't. We talk about it a lot, right? Like, circumstances do not change a person, right? They cannot change you. Starting a new job's not going to change you. New relationship's not going to change you. Now, are there times that you need to leave a toxic or unhealthy relationship to grow? Of course. Or we're not talking about that. We're talking about, like, it's the wrong relationship, or if I had a better job, it would be that, right? If we're always looking outwardly at this thing is going to make things better on its own, it just won't, right? It might for a temporary, right? It might for a few months. The newness, right? The new challenges or learning might, and that's how my expectations were, right? We both lived in or grew up in families of divorce that were pretty prevalent in a lot of different areas. Like, my closest aunt's been divorced, my parents were divorced, my brother's been divorced, so it's like it was pretty prevalent. And I remember going into adulthood really going, that's the last thing I want. And I know a lot of people do. I mean, I was white knuckling, like, I do not want to go through divorce. And so, like, I would really extend, like, I was that person who, like, really would fall head and over heels maybe up front, but then I just didn't want to commit for a long time, right? Like, I even had friends who just would joke around about not having commitment issues, right? And more than just that, like, a lot of stuff in my life. And so I didn't agree with them at that time, but looking back, I wholeheartedly agree with them. I did. And I think that was a big piece of why. And part of it was just not knowing who I was and myself. But also just like I truly was that person who thought a relationship would fix me. Yeah. Right? I was that person who thought like that next relationship would fix me. I would end a relationship or I'd get out of it. And there was, I say several, but a few. I didn't have a ton, so it was like I guess a several for the amount of relationships I had that I would get out. That I either we broke up due to my issues, right, with lust or pornography or something like that, and I would then go out of that relationship, and instead of really focusing on, wow, there's some areas I need to go to God, I need to get better in, I need to fix, or not even just fix it, things need to change. I went out of that going, when I find the right girl, right, it was just the wrong relationship. It was the wrong person. They weren't meant for me. It was very unhealthy because it never really forced me to look in the mirror and say that the way that things went, the decisions I made were my fault, and my choices. We have to take that responsibility first before we really can understand what to do with it. So it took several years, right? It took really until I was just turned 35 to really do that, and change that, which good for us, right?
It worked out for me.
For both of us, right? We both kind of got there. So just having these expectations of how it's going to that relationship or a person's going to change us. The most dangerous thing we can do in relationships is to think that getting in this relationship, being married, having a child, like all these things of like that's going to change things. Like we cannot think circumstances alone are going to change our behaviors, our habits, and who we are. It just won't. They follow us everywhere. So I think for me, really understanding what that looks like, and then understanding and I think we both had this kind of turn of what is marriage for, right? Yeah. Again, I had to get on my knees and pray for a wife or pray for a girl, right? If God would allow that, right? Like, because at that point, again, and we both got to the point, I didn't know if I'd ever get married at that stage, right? 3 years ago, I didn't know if I'd even have ever kids. So getting to the point of, if I don't get married, hey God, I want to get married, it's my desire, but if I don't, you're still God. Yeah. And I'm okay with that, and I'm going to submit to that and serve you in that. And that's a hard place to get to. That's a really tough place to mean it, right? Not to just say it, right? Because I think you can say it, but to truly mean, like, I remember when it's first saying that, and I remember going, wow, God, I meant that. I actually meant that, right? Like, and it was just, it when you mean it, right? Yeah. I was like, I've said it before, but I don't think I really meant it. I didn't want to let go. And I really meant it. And then to pray, like, God, if it is your will, like, I want a wife who seeks you, who knows you, who loves you, who would challenge me in that area. And then when we got married, I think it was when we got engaged, I got mad at God a little bit.
You got engaged and got mad.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I'd really seen, especially after everything we'd been through and like all the growth in us over that period of time, which is probably from what time we got engaged, we'd known each other about a year, right? Mm-hmm. Around that time. So like to see all the growth that we've had and to look at both what we wanted and where we were, and to look at God and go, God, why didn't you bring me somebody like this, 5 years ago? And again, it was that mentality of like, if I would have had this person 5 years ago, God, I wouldn't have went through all that. I wouldn't have made those mistakes. And I quickly got corrected. Like he it says in Hebrews 12, like God corrects us like his sons and his children, right? Quickly got corrected of, if I would have gave this 5 years ago, you would have appreciated it for what it is. You would have not made those mistakes. And I quickly go, yeah, you're right. I would not have appreciated a relationship like this 5 years ago. I still would have made those mistakes because I still hadn't surrendered and understood why I was making those mistakes and what needed to change.
Because it wasn't really about who you got. No. I mean, that does matter. It does. It
can help, but I don't think it would have changed my path. Yeah. Right. And what the way that I was going.
But who I am right now, you could have met that person, because 5 years ago, I wasn't this person.
Right, exactly.
So it wouldn't have really been
I just mean that type of relationship 5 years ago. And it's kind of like, and he did it, I mean, with friends too. It's like, would you have appreciated?
Right.
There's so many. There's 2 or 3 prayers that I've made that's he's answered, and I just kind of got mad, going like, why didn't I have this before? And first, he's like, one, you never asked, because I didn't. I've never asked for a truly godly marriage, someone who seeks him, knows him, loves him. I never got on my knees and asked for that. Right? Like, we ask for superficial things, and not I'm talking about looks, but we're asked for, like, I want someone who's funny, I want someone who like can is driven. I want for these, like, not necessarily bad things, but they're not characteristics of God. They're not like, in terms of who he is. So to really ask that, and know he knew my heart truly wanted that, and it wasn't just this like wink wink, I really want this, but I'm gonna ask for this. It was a real desire of mine.
That's good. So you asked, who do we believe marriage is really for? And I would say marriage is not for us. It's not for me and you to somehow get, a better life out of our time here on earth. Like, it's not for our own pleasure and our own satisfaction. While those are byproducts of our marriage, which is awesome, because I am very satisfied and happy and feel great in our marriage, and I get a lot out of it. Ultimately, our marriage is for God. Like, it's to glorify God. And if that's not the attitude you take into a marriage, then you're really you're looking for a marriage for selfish reasons. And that's probably never going to go well. 1, because you're not living for God, but 2, even inside that marriage, you're living for yourself. Like, you're not going to really be looking to this person of, how can I serve you? How can I be this godly wife to you? How can me and you work together to serve God? It's going to be more about, like, what am I getting from you? Are you meeting my needs? And truly, if both partners are seeking to serve God above everything else, and then next serve each other. And I say serve and not love, because loving is serving, right? But, like, I don't think everyone understands that.
Yeah.
So if we choose to serve God first and then each other, like, all of our needs are going to be met and more. And I don't have to try to squeeze love out of you to get what I need. Like, if I just commit to serving you and you commit to serving me, then our needs are met, and we don't have unsatisfactory feelings about this. So but ultimately, if our goal as a couple isn't to serve God above everything, then, like, our marriage is really null and void. It's pointless. It's purposeless. It's really just self-centeredness, and it's for our own joy and pleasure. And that's not what marriage is for. Marriage is to be a tool for God to use and to build up godly children and to make a difference in the world together. Like, not to just, I have someone who loves me for the rest of my life. I'm like, that's great, but, like, is that all it is? Like, is that all you're really after? Because then you don't really understand what marriage is if all you care about is that you have somebody to, fulfill you the rest of your life, which is something you can't do anyways. So it's kind of not really getting what you're wanting. If that's the aim. Yeah. No,
that's so true. And I think it's everything. I mean, everything in Scripture it says everything we do is to the glory of God, right? Yeah. And if it's your marriage isn't excluded from that, we work at our jobs for the glory of God. We raise our children to the glory of God. We are married to the glory of God. And it's crazy to see some of the things that we see out there, right? And I think, like, we've talked about it before about, people who, basically it's just building a marriage on sand, right? Like, we're seeing it right now. Unfortunately, we're seeing, like, I was reading an article this morning and it was talking about and we've talked about it now for a month now, because they saw it in China. And I think we'll see it even more so here. It's just the spike in divorce rate. And I don't think that's going to be different from church to non-church. Or I say church lightly, people who go to church.
People who attend.
Yeah. So I think but I was reading things about people already, like, trying to file for divorce, and people who calling attorneys secretly in their house because their spouse is in the same house. So how are they going to call them? But so many of the courts are closed and you can't file non-essential stuff. And it's like, most attorneys and most people are predicting it's going to happen, obviously, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't COVID-19 or anything that all of a sudden came in and swept it off such a firm foundation, right? Like we had such a firm marriage, and all of a sudden, I don't think COVID-19 again, and its own entity created issues. I think it exposed and accelerated certain issues that already had a foundation or a lack thereof.
Yeah.
So we see people building that house on sand, right? Whether it be living together before getting married, whether it be breaking certain boundaries, right? We talked about last week how important boundaries. We'll probably have a whole conversation potentially around boundaries because they are extremely important. Accountability to those boundaries. We are thankful to have people around us who were accountable, or we were accountable to. So I think having those, but you have to have that to that glory of God, and to give him that glory, it's got to be built on that firm foundation, which is the marriage takes three. Obviously comes in and saying like, God is our foundation. He is the centerpiece. He is everything. We constantly are checking each other, kind of going, is God a part of this? Right. Am I making you higher than him? Right. Yeah. Like, we can do that so easily, I think, in a marriage. I'm finding out, right? Like, you easily can just get so enamored with your spouse, or so into them, or so it's about them. And now they're higher than God, and they become an idol.
Yeah. Your spouse can be an idol. Your children can be an idol. I think some people, when they don't understand that, they don't wrap their brains around that, they think that's crazy. Like, I don't worship my spouse. I don't worship my child. But an idol is anything that takes the place of God, which means it's the number one thing on your list, right? Like, so you have your list of priorities that all relationships included. And if your child gets majority of your energy, your time, your love, your admiration, like, and I'm saying you should absolutely love your children 100%, like, to a
please love your
children.
Yes.
I mean, like, I imagine we have children. Like, I lay down my life for my children. I'm not saying that that's wrong, but if they hold a higher position than God, like, they're an idol. You're worshiping your child now. It's your God, and it's just not healthy, and it's not going to make you a good parent, right? Having just because they're first on your list doesn't make them really high, right? It just means that your priorities are really low. Like, when God's first, your priorities are really high, and you can actually love your children better when they're not first.
Yeah. So one of the scriptures we had this week was Philippians 3. Philippians 4. My page got turned. Philippians 4:4. Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again. Rejoice. And this is obviously Paul's letter. Let your gentleness be evident to all. Paul uses the word gentle a lot. I love it, especially when he's talking to Timothy. He's talking to men. His gentleness. I love it. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. And I think, again, when we set those expectations for our relationships, for what we, our desires or will in God, we take those to Him, and that peace comes. Because I remember having that peace when I go, God, even if I don't, right? Even if that's not in your will, the plan for me, I just felt that peace immediately. And I remember just going about life like I was okay, right? Even when we went through that period of we met, but then we kind of went, 2 months or so of not dating, but just kind of being friends. And we were just having a peace. Like, I never felt, I think a part of our relationship, I just never really felt this pressure. I never felt this need of having to do something. It was just this peace because I knew where it was coming from, and I knew it was from God because, again, giving that to Him and putting that in Him from the beginning. Now, we talked about like having those expectations, and those are we need to, right? We need to have them in God. There's a whole other thing of letting them play out in real life, because we talk about expectations. And I think it sounded really pretty earlier, of serving each other and
Oh, yeah.
That's great, and that's the goal. We talk about it all the time. The goal is like ultimate servitude to each other is our ideal goal, right? Because we know what that would look like, and we know that's what God wants us to do. But we didn't really serve each other the last year real well.
I think so. We talked about what our expectations were like earlier in life, but like leading up to like right when we got married, I think my expectations were that it was going to be really simple for us to get along. Like I wasn't naive. I knew we would have disagreements and stuff, but I certainly did not anticipate how easy it would be to how quickly.
Yeah.
Not just easy, but also quickly. I mean, it was like a month into our marriage and we're already just like arguing like crazy over really stupid stuff. And it's just, it just kind of hits you all of a sudden like, oh, this is...
What was one thing that really surprised you in the first, say, like 6 months of our marriage? Something that you expected that was not what it quite was, or something that was surprising to you, or in either way, good or bad, I guess, or...
I think, well, like I said, I think it surprised me how fast, like the honeymoon phase was over. And I said that to one of our friends one time who had just gotten married, and I was like, it's, the honeymoon phase isn't going to last long, and it wasn't to be like hurtful or even to be negative. I was like, it's just the truth. Like, you're not gonna, I mean, maybe some people, if you are that way and your honeymoon phase lasts forever and you never argue, like, good on you, man. But for us, that was not the case. And I think for many, that's also not the case. And so that was surprising how, like, literally a week after getting back from our honeymoon, or even on our honeymoon.
Yeah, we argued on our honeymoon.
We argued.
Not a lot, but we definitely did.
A few times.
Yeah, we had a few times.
Over the dumbest one was over gelato.
Who argues over gelato? Like,
we do. We argue over gelato. So
if we had a redo our honeymoon, I don't think that would happen at this point. We've come a long way, but
we've come a super long way.
So that's why, I mean, we've always tried to be really realistic in expectations when we talk to people who are even single, but especially when they're dating or engaged or recently married, right? I think it's a lot of people didn't. I'm not saying people weren't like super like honest and vulnerable, but not a lot of people really aren't, because I don't think a lot of people want to let you in. I mean, we could meet somebody for the first time, they could ask us about it. We're just real honest, going, it's the best thing, love it. Today's a hard day, right? Like, I really don't want to look at him right now or look at her right now. Like, love her to death, right? It's like one of those things, I love them, but I don't really like them right now, right? Yeah. Like, it's like I love her, but I don't really like her right now. But I'll always love her, because we talk about like, it's, choosing that love.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's just being honest and going like, man, you got to have those expectations. We went through pre-marriage counseling, right? So, and I encourage everyone to do it.
Post-marriage counseling.
But yeah, one of the things we really noticed, and maybe it exists, I don't think it's definitely not near as existent as pre-marriage counseling, was going, there needs to be post-marriage counseling.
Yes.
You need to talk about the expectations, who's going to take out the trash, who's going to do the money, how are you going to communicate. All those things are fantastic. You need to have those in place. But then when it's reality and it's game time, right? Like,
because all that kind of like 99% of what you talk about in premarital counseling is just going to go right out the window.
Yeah, when you're in the middle of that argument and frustration, you're not thinking of, hold on, what did we talk about? Like, no, you're frustrated. Yeah.
Because it's easy to talk about scenarios, but until you're in them and you're actually feeling the emotion that comes with them, like, you really don't know how you're going to deal with it. You just don't.
Yeah.
I think making a mental boundary, like for us, like, we never raise our voice at each other. We don't call names. We don't insult each other. That's always been a standard. Yeah. And that should be a standard. So no matter how frustrated you get, you do not yell. You do not throw things. You do not name call. Like, those are just completely off limits. But I tell you, you really don't know how you're going to deal with the situation until you're in it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you're going to make mistakes. Like, we've said and done things that weren't the best choices and had to come back and apologize for it. And that's really important too, is being able to apologize. And but yeah, we've grown a whole lot. I couldn't imagine us fighting over gelato anymore. Never again. Maybe like a cookie or something. We might fight over a cookie.
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so. I think we've really been good at now to the point of trying to, again, like having that servant mindset of, is it that big a deal, right? Say it's the last brownie, right? Like, you both want the last brownie. Let's be real. Don't lie and say you don't want it. You know, no, I don't want it. Like, you want it. But it's like serving that person, like, I want you to have it more than I want it. Like, I want you to enjoy that more than I want it. And that's, and some people can be stubborn and selfish in that and think it's playful and funny. And I get it, but I just really think at a heart level, that's really going to wear long term, right? Because it's words and it's feeling, and what comes out of our mouth is what comes from our heart. And I think it's a heart stance. And so I think you have to communicate those expectations when you are in a relationship, or you get in a relationship if you're single. If you've set those expectations for yourself, to make sure they line up, and don't when you have those boundaries and expectations, like, and especially when they're of God, like, don't start negotiating those, right? Those are so important, because they will, or don't think they'll change. Oh, this person will change when they're around me, right? Like, let's be real. You might be an amazing person, but there's no one I've met that people can be around and they're going to change that person just by being around them. The only person that's going to do that is God. Like, them being around God and in the Word of God and constantly seeking Him, it's the only way that's going to happen, right? We've seen it too many times. So I think having those, and then don't be afraid to, you know, we talk about most post-marriage, but don't be afraid to do couples counseling, right? We did it. We did it about 6 months in. It wasn't because of anything insanely ridiculous that happened. I think it was just like those small things add up and go like, let's do something now, right?
We just knew that we were struggling to not get frustrated over
communication,
really silly things.
So I think it was one of those things like, let's get some mentors, right? So we were able to get with people in our church who'd been doing this for 25, 30 years, right? And there's people out there that are willing to do that, and it's amazing. And they had great advice, and they were able to sit down and talk through certain things. And I think that's not anything to be worried about or ashamed of. I think some people think if I'm going to counseling, things are broken. No, it's not broken, right? And I know people talk about counseling all the time. They're like, you don't go to the doctor just because you have, like, you're dying, right? You go there to fix certain things, or for medicine. And it's the same thing. It's just to say, like, we're not perfect. We let's talk to people who have been through stepped in the same holes we have. So let's try not to keep stepping in them over and over and over again. So there's definitely ways to do that. But the first and foremost is submit that to God, right? Submit that relationship, build that solid foundation on that, not on sand.
I had a good analogy for that.
Yeah.
In the other one. Anyways, but yeah, Jesus has to be the foundation. Like, your relationship with God and y'all's relationship as a couple founded in Christ, like, has to be it. Because you can listen to all the podcasts and you can read all the books and you can do all of that. But if you're not really going to Christ and you're not growing your relationship with Him, and that's not your foundation, all of these tools that you might have access to, they're like a brick that somebody gives you to build a building, and you need these things to build this structure. But if you start putting those bricks just on top of sand, it's not going to stand. It's gonna the smallest little gust of wind, and it's gonna be destroyed. And that's what divorces look like, is when you might have all these tools, but you stick them on top of sand, like, you have nothing sturdy to hold up the structure. And truly, the foundation of Christ is what's going to actually help those tools become what they're meant to become, and to stand the test of time. And, because I don't know, Jesus, I don't know how people make it any amount of years without Jesus. Like, you hear people being married for 15 years and then they get divorced, and it's like, I don't know how you made it that long. Like, I don't know. I think it would be very, very difficult to have a truly successful relationship without Christ. It just doesn't really make sense to me.
Yeah, it's a good analogy, though. Yeah.
Thanks.
So I think it's just, you have to have that foundation for long term. And again, it's who created, God created marriage, and I want our marriage to thrive and to give him glory, because he created it for us to enjoy it, right? He talks about it. Paul may talk about not to get married, but it's not wrong. Jesus talks about marriage, talks about leaving your parents and becoming one flesh, and he talks about it seriously. He doesn't talk about it lightly, right? I don't think anything Jesus talks about is lightly. Everything he talks about is serious, and he brings it up very pointedly and very, for a reason. Everything he brings up is intentional, and talks about. So I think it's something that we have to take serious and understand what that looks like. But I want to enjoy it to what he created it to be. Yeah. And I think we're on that track, and we're definitely going to hit some speed bumps and some obstacles along the way. Yeah. But again, I think it's, what are we doing with it? Who are we going to with it? How are we resolving that in that time? How are we serving each other? That we constantly have to talk about. So we'll talk about that more, because one thing I want to talk about, we don't have time today, is submission. That's going to be a big one. Is obviously the Bible talks about, and I believe it's in Ephesians, about wives submitting to your husbands. That's a tough one, ladies. I know that's tough.
We'll talk all about that,
right? And men loving their wives, such as Christ loves his bride. So we'll talk about that one day. We'll focus just on submission, because that's a big topic that I hear talked about a lot, that people just either don't understand, don't like. Maybe they just go with it, but they still don't quite get it. I didn't get it for a long time. I'll be honest, I didn't either. I was in that camp of, I just don't really understand. Is that today? We ask that question a lot. Does that really mean 2020 today? Is that still relevant? I think we do that a lot with certain things. Is that so we'll talk about that. But thanks for hanging out with us in our home and on our couch. That you can't see, that's shredded by the cats on the outside.
Yeah, this portion of the couch looks nice.
The outside's not so much. But thank you guys. Hope you guys are healthy and safe and happy. And anything else you want to add?
Nope.
All right. All right. Love you guys.
All right. Love y'all.